right now. Today is the day that you choose to change the rest of your life. It is time to turn your setback into the greatest comeback story ever told, and nobody is more capable than you. This is the Ranting Weight Watcher podcast, the future #1 weight loss podcast in the world. I am your host, Donato Russo. I hope you enjoy the show today. If this is your first time here and you enjoy the show, please subscribe and spread the word of the Ranting Weight Watcher podcast wherever you are and to whomever will listen. If you'd like to connect on social media or wherever else, check out my Linktree page, Linktree/the Ranting Weight Watcher. Let's connect today. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 176 of the Ranting Weight Watcher podcast. If this is your first time here, I want to welcome you to the show. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, please consider subscribing to the show. If the app that you're using allows you to rate the show or leave feedback about the show, please consider doing so. By doing that, what you do is you enable someone else to find the podcast so much easier because of the algorithm set in place. So please consider leaving a 4-star or 5-star rating. And if you have the ability to leave feedback about the show so that other people can find and the word can be spread about the Ranting Weight Watcher as far and wide as it can go. Most of all, if you tell anyone about the show, anyone you know to be in the same position you and I are in, that is the best way to support the growth of this show. Tell anyone who will listen about this show. Well, let's get into this! Journey updates. I am up this week 1.4 pounds, so that's 2 gains in a row. Now, everything in me would love to just drop the fermented vegetables because of the extra sodium. I don't know how much they're doing for me. I don't know if they're helping. I have no idea. A lot of this has to happen on weeks and weeks and weeks worth of consistent use when it comes to changing gut health. If all I'm going to do is enable fluid retention, then I want to change that. I, for the longest time, have always lived by you make 0 changes unless there are 3 gains, because 3 gains would mean a trend. So no changes unless there's 3. So this past week would have been the 2nd gain. The previous weigh-in, it was a gain of 0.2. This weigh-in, it was a gain of 1.4. So a total gain over the last 2 weeks of 1.6 pounds. Everything in me wants to go away from the use of the fermented vegetables in order to try and improve gut health for my autoimmune condition, because my body is already sensitive to the use of sodium in any form. But I'll keep it going one more week because I created this rule for myself for a reason. And in the beginning of my journey, I wasted a lot of time making unnecessary changes. And it took a lot of discipline to get here. And I have told you guys a number of times that it is a good way to live. As long as you are consistent with what you do, you should be able to watch the scale go up 3 times before you look back and have the dependency on your work to say, everything I tracked is tracked 97% accuracy. That's what I always ask you for, 97%. So I will wait another week. I will keep the fermented vegetables going on, and we'll see what happens next weigh-in. Since the beginning of this podcast, there was one goal in mind, and this was to wake up the individual so that they can take some real strides for their own health. My message, as I said to you last week, is not for everyone. My message would almost never be accepted if delivered directly to the people. But there's this wonderful dynamic that ensues because of this podcast. When I say these words, people volunteer and say, he's talking about me. It's like he's talking to me. He's talking about me. It is in those moments that, if you ever have those thoughts while listening to me, that you are owning up to what I'm saying. You are taking what I've said and said, yes, this is me. This applies to me. And that's the wonderful dynamic of this podcast. Because if these words were delivered directly to you from me, they would almost never be accepted. Let's just say it honestly. And the last few weeks I've been talking about, a lot of the message has been to wake up, see the health industry for what it is, and start to choose you above all else. The problem with all of this is somewhere along the line, I'm not sure exactly when, but somewhere along the line, we lost our focus. And somehow, the only thing that could bring us joy is the food we eat. There are so many things that can bring you joy. So many things in this world. Number one on the overwhelming majority of the people's lists is food. But put them in a room with a man with a white coat who's telling them they should no longer eat gluten, or they should no longer have sweets, or whatever else it may be, and that same person will act like their life is over. I can't eat anything anymore. Someone you hired to tell you what is wrong with you when you don't feel well is telling you you need to change the way you eat, and you're acting as if your life is over. And yet, when I say that the overwhelming majority of you would never acknowledge that food is the number one thing in your life, would never connect what I just said after the fact. This is the world I come from. I come from a world where I'm surrounded by people saying a whole lot of stuff. And there's a blessing and a curse to having my mind. Because when you talk to me, or you just talk in general, and I'm in the room, it doesn't have to be directly to me, I can hear what you're not saying. And if I watch you long enough, I can see that your actions either coincide with what you say or they don't. They conflict what you say. And if I had to categorize the overwhelming majority of the population, I would say that their words are in direct contradiction of their actions. I'm not excluding myself from this list. I was part of that for a very long time. It was only just in the last 5 years that I realized how much work this would actually be and that I was willing and not just able. And that's what my question is going to be today. Are you willing, or are you just able? All of the weight loss plans in the world, especially the ones you pay to have a membership to, they're filled with people in direct contradiction of themselves. They say one thing with their mouth, but if you sit back and say nothing and just watch, their actions say something completely different. I remember in studio, before COVID, before virtuals, before all this existed, in studio, the same people, week after week, would say the same things. And then they'd go however many weeks, completely they forgot they said these things. And then complain of lack of results. They didn't think I was listening. They didn't think I cared what they had to say. They didn't think that because I wasn't looking at them intently, that my ears were open and I was listening to every word. I've said it many times that I watch behavior. And people could look at me and think I'm in my own world, in a daydream, on some other planet. And yet I know everything going on around me. I watched people in this studio, week after week, talk about how they go out to this restaurant, that restaurant, the other restaurant, and ate whatever they want. They don't care. They actually said it like that. I had whatever I wanted. I didn't care. Saturday after Saturday after Saturday, I hear these things. Then when the results show up, they completely forgot all of the times they said these things. And they can say, I don't know why this is happening. I don't know why it's just not working for me. They completely forgot all of those things. When COVID happened and we all were sent home and virtual started everywhere around the country, a lot of us were in the same groups that we were in our studio, but it was just a local virtual. And then some time went by, and we went from having local virtuals to having all of those be canceled to having national virtual meetings with national coaches. So I naturally transitioned over, joined a national coach, Coach Sophie F. You guys know her. I've mentioned her many times. I go however many months and months and months. And I hear a lot of the same stuff in the workshops that are virtual. A lot of the same things. A time came where I had hit a milestone. I cannot remember if it was 100 or 125. I want to say 125. And I went into the studio because I wanted the charm. And at that time, they were just starting to allow the people back into the studios. It was, COVID was kind of calming down. People had to make reservations to go into the studios. I didn't go back full time to the studio because it was just too much of a hassle. They weren't allowing you to reserve a seat for a person who was not a member. In my case, my wife and I would go and we would bring our daughter every week. Suddenly that wasn't, a good thing to do anymore. So it became more convenient to continue national virtuals. So that's what we did. I made the choice to go into the studio to get that charm. And so we're years into this at this point. I started in 2019, COVID hit shortly after, and we're talking about 2020, 2021, whatever it was. I go in there, and the same people are saying the exact same things. I ate what I want. I don't care. And I'm sure if I would have kept going, eventually they would come to the point where they were frustrated for no results. They never make the connection that the actions that they take in any given moment are exactly what causes the result. Mostly because they're surrounded by an environment that enables them to have the actions that they have while having minimal accountability for those actions. This made me crazy. And I'm sure if I go back years and years and years, I did the exact same thing. I'm not faulting them for doing it. But at some point, I got my head on straight. And I think that at some point, everybody has to get their head on straight. Another thing that happened in the course of me being on WW, they created this environment that was a social media type environment called Connect. And this environment was a nice, positive place. I didn't really think anything negative about it. And as time went on, they added features, they did all these things. Okay, wonderful. They added the ability to make a poll. And suddenly, this poll would reveal a couple of different kinds of people. One kind of person it would reveal is a kind of person that could not make a decision of what dress or clothing they were going to wear to whatever event. I don't really care about those people. What should I wear? Suit A or suit B? Dress A or dress B? None of that matters to me. It doesn't matter. But it also gave birth to a bunch of people looking to enable themselves. And we have this thing, there's this saying that there's safety in numbers. And usually what that means is when there's something hard to do, you find it easier if there's a bunch of people that are going to support you in that doing. So if you had to come against someone, or let's say it like this, if you were going to have an intervention because your family member was an alcoholic, there would be safety in the fact that there are a bunch of people who believe the same thing. If you were the only one, it would turn into an altercation. But if 5 or 10 people agree with you and they're all coming to the one person to say, hey, your drinking is a problem, what could the one person say? How could that many people feel this way and all be in agreement and then you still be the one in the right? We're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. I now present to you the Ranting Weight Watcher Accountability Creed. If you choose this day to say this creed, you are accountable to me, the author. You are also accountable to all of those before you who have taken the creed, and all of those after you who will take the creed. But most of all, you are accountable to yourself. Now recite with me the Accountability Creed. Nothing can stand in my way because I choose to be unstoppable. My challenges crumble in my presence because I choose strength when I am weak. My insecurities have no power over my life because I choose confidence in the face of fear. I own every last one of my mistakes because I choose growth over mediocrity. The mirror and the scale are powerless because I move forward in spite of the result. Circumstances are not obstacles because I see solutions instead of problems. The demons of my past can no longer torment me because I choose to renew my mind daily. All things are possible as long as I believe, because if God is for me, who can be against me? This is the creed I declare each day. It is about what I do, not what I say. I will learn the work that needs to be done. I will never stop, even when I've won. I will work consistently, no matter the cost. I refuse to believe that all hope is lost. I will work when I want to. I will work when I don't. I will work when they are cheering. I will work when they won't. I will work when it's easy. I will work when it's hard. The atonements that I've made are made with no regard. I will work when it's cold. I will work when it's hot, because choices have consequences, justified or not. When I think I know it all, I will start back at one, because regardless of what I think, the work is never done. And from this moment forward, when times are tough, I choose to believe that I am enough. And we are back. Thanks for sticking with me. That same feeling, the feeling that is supposed to enable you to have courage in any particular moment, also revealed a different kind of person looking to skirt the system and thinking, as long as other people are doing what I'm doing, that somehow makes it okay. And you started to see questions like, I don't track free food. Do you? Yes or no? And that term, free food, makes me crazy. I don't track free food. Yes or no? I was on Connect, and someone makes a post, and it's a poll. And there's a picture of a package of dried fruit. And the woman who tracked the dry fruit saw that it was coming up as 2 points. And her argument is, if fruit is 0, why is dried fruit points? This kind of thing makes me crazy. You are paying $45 a month to have access to a system that all you seem to want to do is find out ways how to not use it. And as long as there's a bunch of other people that will not use it, you're willing to do it. If everybody on the planet is doing it, then you kind of look like the Lone Ranger and I don't know what you're going to do at that point. Maybe you just do it in secret and never post again. But they make posts like this where they think that somehow they're the same thing because they both have the same name. I could blindfold you and plug your nose and put a piece of fruit in your mouth and then put a piece of dried fruit in your mouth, and I'll bet you know the difference. But yet you want to pretend they are the same. Without even trying, a half a second on your tongue, you would know the difference between fruit and dried fruit. And there's a whole phenomenon with blended fruit too. Don't even get me started on that. People looking for loopholes in a system they pay to use. And if they find what they think is a loophole, they look for support in order to be able to use it. What's this really about? Is this really about you becoming healthy? Or is it just your ability to say you're trying? There was this speech on Instagram from a coach, an NFL coach. And it rang so true with me when I heard it. I don't know the speech word for word, so I'm going to paraphrase what it said. He said that everybody in this room was able to do the hard things necessary to be better football players. They were all able. But his question was, were they willing? Because there's a difference between being able and being willing. The overwhelming majority of members of weight loss programs are able. Every single one of them. But how many of them are actually willing? The people who get to the point of optimal health. I'm not just talking about some number on a scale that a doctor perceives as healthy. I'm talking about health overall, body composition that would make anybody say, oh, they just got lucky. That percentage of people is very, very tiny. The people that will achieve optimal health is very, very tiny. The people that will learn what it takes and be willing to make the changes is this small faction of the entire group. Very, very small. Every choice you make on a regular basis tells the world, if not you, whether you are willing or just able. Every single decision you make is dictating exactly that. People actually pay to be part of a program and then question everything just because they don't agree with it. They pay no mind to the fact that they have been doing things their way for how many years, and they're in the positions they are in because of their own actions. Instead, they take their current situation, they tell the world, okay, I joined this program, I decided to give them my money, and now instead of questioning my own actions, I question everything else. I question whether it's necessary. Is it really necessary to track if the points are 0? Is it really necessary to weigh and measure? And there's people that just outright make the decision. They don't ask anybody anything. They just say it's not necessary for me to track. They make that decision and they continue living in delusions just because they pay for a membership, somehow they're owed results. What do you mean the scale went up? Then the whole world's got to spend the entire workshop figuring out why your results went the way you went when you're holding back the majority of the real information. I don't mind if people struggle. Don't get me wrong. What I mind is when the whole world is willing to help you and you're not willing to tell the whole story. But then when a bunch of questions start coming up and it exposes the actuality of it all, then it becomes, why are we having this conversation? You already know the answers. But nobody likes to hear that. They like to be tickled with words that make you feel warm and fuzzy. It doesn't make any sense. All I can say here is, somewhere along the line, I realized what was required. And suddenly I went from being able to being willing. When I made this transition, it transformed my life. I didn't do it with some blueprint that somebody else created. I created my own path. The problem is, being in my position now, is I want everybody to see the way. I don't have to make the way. I just want to make you see that if you get out of your own way, that there's a way for everybody. And questions like, why are dried fruit 2 points when fruit is 0? Make me crazy. Questioning foundational principles that build the program. Why should I have to track? Why should this be points and not that? If that's 0, then why aren't you eating that? Why are you eating dried bananas? Why don't you actually have a banana? Why? You know there's a difference. That's why. You like the dried banana better because why? It's sweeter. It tastes better. So there must be some difference between the two of them, yet you want to pretend they are the same. This is what it feels like to watch a bunch of people standing in their own way. All of the time. Surrounded by people standing in their own way. It doesn't really matter what I say here. The question's always going to be, are you willing? Because everybody knows you're able. Everybody has said some iteration of the little saying, you can't outrun your diet. You can't compete with what you eat. There's so many ways to say it. So the first thing that people say when they can't exercise is, oh, I can't exercise. But can you lift your hand and put food in your mouth? If you can't exercise, then your only tool is your hand and what goes into your mouth. People want to blame it all on what they say they can't do, what they perceive that they can't do, and they want to completely ignore what they can do. They just want to complain about the situations, but they'll never look back to these moments. They'll never look back to the little post that they made. Whichever way it went, you knew what you were going to pick. I mean, your post tells us how you feel and what you're going to do. You're just looking for support. You're looking for an overwhelming majority of the population to say, yeah, go ahead and track it as 0. Who cares? So you can feel good about doing it, and so you don't have to feel like you are doing something wrong. We all know that no matter how the poll goes, if it ends up being 51% of the people track it the right way and would put the 2 points on their tracker, you're going to still do what you want. You're just going to do it a whole lot quieter. And you may even remove the post. I don't doubt that for a second. The one thing I became so passionate about in all of this process was everything I discovered, I wanted to make sure everyone knew. It's part of the reason this podcast exists. And that discovery, the difference between being willing and being able is kind of the subject of this podcast in different ways every week since it began. I just say it in different ways. And I say it week after week. I think people don't hear me week after week. Maybe I'm planting seeds, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm getting through, maybe I'm not. I can't make you drink. I can show you where the water is, but I can't make you drink. Eventually, you're going to be put in a position to own your own actions. You might find all of the support in the world to help you accept and minimize that realization when you're facing the truth. And yet, when you stare in the mirror at night, the one reason why people have so many bad things to say about themselves is oftentimes they are in direct contradiction with what they say. And they don't realize that that's the core. The reason why they have a million negative things to say about themselves is because they don't match up. What they're physically doing does not match up with what they say. And if I had 10 people in front of me, 9 of them would be in this scenario. Their words contradict their actions. Getting you to realize it is one thing. Getting you to do something about it is something completely different. Because that, in the end, is your choice. There's hundreds of people surrounding you, I'm sure, every single one of you who listens to me, that would make you feel comfortable just staying there in the place that you're in, being able and not willing. You know, I don't know that I'll ever understand people. They waste so much time and so much energy in this endless search for hundreds and hundreds of people who will validate what they feel. If they just spent a fraction of that time, a small fraction of that time, finding 4 or 5 people who achieved more than they actually dreamed to achieve. If they could surround themselves with 5 people who have achieved more than they ever dreamed to achieve, they will transform their life. But instead, they would rather search for hundreds and hundreds of people in the exact same situation so they can feel validated in their current feelings and also enable their stagnation. And then wonder why things don't change, why they don't have results. What are they doing wrong? I'll never understand this. 4 or 5 people who would be willing to push you beyond your breaking point, who wouldn't care if you actually hated them for what they said and what they pushed you to do. 4 or 5 people who achieved way more than you ever dreamed to achieve can transform your life. Stop wasting your time looking to validate what will keep you exactly where you are. It's time to take ownership and move forward in spite of it. And not only move forward in spite of it, to push yourself beyond breaking points and to surround yourself with people who will make sure that you push yourself beyond your breaking point. Because all of these other people, all they're looking to do is feel good about themselves. And they have no problem enabling you to stay right where you are if it makes them feel better. Because you know what they're thinking? They're looking at you and say, well, I'm better off than they are, so I'm okay too. I'm doing pretty good for myself. They're comparing themselves to you, and as long as they feel good, they'll enable you to stay right where you are. If you want to stay right where you are, don't listen to me. But I'm here to find the people that are not just able. I'm here to find the people that are willing. I love each and every one of you. God bless you all.